I knew something was off the second I saw Madison's smug reflection in the break room microwave. Her lip gloss was the same shade as betrayal, and she was microwaving salmon again, crime enough. But what really got me was how she was standing. Like she owned the goddamn place. Like she didn't just waltz in here 2 months ago on the heels of the founder's funeral, wearing heels that cost more than my first car and whispering buzzwords like synergy and elevated client journey while stapling herself to our CEO's arm like a knockoff Birkin. I didn't say a word. I just poured my burnt coffee, turned on my heel, and walked back to my office, fourth floor, corner cubicle, the one with the dusty ficus and the laminated float charts no one dared throw away. 22 years. I've buried 3 parents, 2 cats, and 1 gallbladder while working this job, and I've never once been late. I've onboarded more interns than I've had birthdays, and every single one of them still calls me when their payroll system breaks. But that morning, that was the day my name disappeared from the operations Slack channel. Oh, and real quick, if you're listening and thinking, damn, Deborah's getting done dirty, hit that subscribe button and throw us a like. 90% of y'all don't, and trust me, every click's like a sip of cheap boxed wine to the storytelling engine we run. Keeps the lights on and the drama flowing. Back to it. Technically, I was still employed. Technically. But when you can't access vendor compliance logs, your name's left off the Q4 planning invite, and some fresh out of MBA intern is accidentally assigned your responsibilities, you know what's coming. Halcyon Solutions was the kind of place that didn't fire you outright, not unless they needed a tax write-off. No, they ghosted you first, like a bad date. Slow deletion by omission. Still, I did my damn job. That morning, I was finalizing our updated ISO compliance review for Q4, rechecking NDA renewal language with the Korean distributor, and adding the missing signatures to our last OEM vendor recert packet, 3 items that, I might add, no one else at that company even knew existed. Arthur used to call me his fortress. Said I was the only reason the SEC never knocked on his door. Arthur. God, I still hear his voice in the way I double-check every signature block. He wasn't perfect, he had a temper and thought PowerPoint was a form of torture, but he built Halcyon from scratch. Back when cloud meant weather and we stored contracts in metal cabinets. He'd passed barely 63 days earlier. Brain aneurysm. No warning, no goodbyes, just one Friday morning gone cold. At the memorial, Madison showed up in white. Said it was for celebrating his transition. Her LinkedIn says she was in strategic development before joining us. What it doesn't say is that her strategy was apparently climbing on top of the CEO during the founder's wake and whispering sweet nothings about rebranding initiatives into his receding hairline. But Arthur and I, we had one final project. One last thing before his handwriting faded from the world. We were updating the corporate governance packet. It was mostly cleanup, removing some archaic bylaws, updating titles. But he'd added something. A clause buried in the appendix. He handed it to me in his kitchen, the night before his last board call, still in his slippers. If things go sideways after I'm gone, he said, I want this triggered. You're the only one I trust not to sell the place to a hedge fund or let Chad from sales rename it Halcyon AI. I laughed. He didn't. Just make sure they follow the rules, he said, sliding the signed packet toward me. And I did. I filed it, logged it, scanned and notarized it, because that's what fortresses do. That morning, as I sat reviewing compliance records with a sticky note that said Arthur's last fluttering from my monitor, I heard it. Deborah Henley to HR. Deborah Henley to HR, please. And just like that, the air got still. You'd think I was being called to the principal's office. Half the floor went quiet. My ficus even stopped swaying in the AC draft. I stood, tucked the packet into my tote bag, and walked out without a word. It was almost funny. I'd signed every board resolution in that building for 2 decades. Hell, I had personally corrected their last IPO submittal to the SEC. But when I stepped into that beige, soulless HR room with its smell of recycled toner and shame, Madison didn't even offer me a chair. We've restructured, she said, crossing her arms like she was guarding Fort Knox. Your role is now redundant. She pushed a white envelope across the table with 2 fingers like it might bite her. It contained a check for $1,000. One last courtesy, she chirped. Be grateful. Some dinosaurs don't even get that much. I didn't blink, I didn't curse. I didn't even pick up the envelope. I just reached into my bag, pulled out the founder's board packet, Arthur's final signature still sharp in ink, and held it to my chest. She didn't even notice, but Kyle would. He was going to see it, and he was going to remember. Madison's perfume smelled like a Sephora fight in July, chemical sweet, sticky with desperation, and trying too hard to cover rot. She didn't bother sitting when I walked into HR. Just stood there with her arms folded across her knockoff designer blazer, chin tilted like she'd just won something. Deborah, she said, her voice already smiling. Glad you could make time, as if I wasn't summoned like a damn Starbucks order. The HR rep was new, some poor girl named Ashley with shaking hands and a clipboard like a riot shield. She didn't speak, just nodded and blinked too much. Madison, meanwhile, played every word like she was auditioning for a TED talk no one asked for. We've reevaluated the org structure post-founder transition, she said, each syllable clipped like she was biting off the end of a vape drag. We're moving in a more agile direction. Fresh leadership, disruptive thinking, that sort of thing. My chair squeaked when I sat. That was the only sound I made. Which brings us to your role, she went on, pausing like I was supposed to cry or beg or throw a stapler. It's been classified as non-essential. I tilted my head, non-essential. I ran 3 of their international compliance calendars. The vendor portal's password still lived in my head because nobody else remembered it. The last time someone tried to transfer a contract without me, the system flagged them for fraud and locked them out for 72 hours. But sure, non-essential. Madison slid a white envelope across the table. We're offering $1,000 as a transitional courtesy. You'll find a separation letter included. You're being asked to vacate by noon. $1,000, no severance, no exit interview, just $1,000 slap wrapped in HR letterhead. Be grateful, she added, smiling like she just stepped on a spider in heels. Some dinosaurs don't even get that much. There was a beat of silence. Ashley, the HR rep, coughed nervously. Pushing a bottle of complimentary water toward me like that would somehow patch the hole where my livelihood used to be. I didn't say a damn word. Instead, I stood. My knees cracked because they always do now. I walked out, past the intern pit and the coffee machine that still had my decaf-only post-it stuck on it. Walked straight to my desk and picked up 3 things. My pen. The one Arthur gifted me the year we finally cracked the Fortune 1000. A rusted flash drive that held backups of every board vote from 2011 to 2023. The corporate record binder I kept under my desk, duct-taped and annotated, with Arthur's initials on at least 6 revised policy slips. As I zipped my bag, Kyle from legal walked by, earbuds in. He didn't make eye contact. Funny thing about being the operations lead, nobody notices you until something catches fire. And by then, the smoke's already in their lungs. I passed the IT desk. No one said goodbye. I passed the CEO's glass fishbowl office. He was on a Zoom call with one of our partners. He didn't wave, just kept talking with his hands, pretending the numbers on that screen hadn't come from a report I wrote last Thursday night at 10 p.m. When I reached the elevator, I turned one last time, just to see it, Halcyon Solutions. The name etched in backlit chrome above the reception desk. Arthur's legacy, and now? Just a jungle gym for parasites in suits. The elevator doors opened. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. But inside, something old was waking up. Not grief, not sadness. Focus. Cold, silent focus. By the time I hit the parking garage, I was already replaying Madison's exact words in my mind. Redefined. Non-essential, be grateful. Like little audio landmines I could step on later when I needed fuel. I drove home with the windows down, letting October air slap some clarity back into my skull. The whole drive, I didn't even turn on the radio, just silence. Me and the rhythm of a 2011 Camry engine that still outperformed half the people left in that building. Once inside, I made tea, not wine. Not yet. This wasn't over. I laid everything out on the dining table. The binder, the flash drive, the envelope Madison had handed me like it was a medal. I opened it, read it, memorized every typo. Scanned the final paycheck, $1,000. No PTO payout, no final accounting of earned bonuses. Not even a stub with benefits termination dates. Just a check. It may as well have said shut up in Comic Sans. I smiled, and I walked into the closet and pulled out the fireproof lockbox. Inside was the last thing Arthur ever signed, a board packet with his scrawled signature at the bottom and mine 2 lines beneath it. The final revision. The one with the change he added in a moment of grim foresight. The one he called the if it all goes to hell clause. And just above it in his handwriting, only Deborah triggers this, no one else. I stared at those words for a long, long time, and I opened my laptop, logged into my personal legal portal, and typed one sentence into the secure message field, Review Clause 11.6c. I've been officially terminated, time to light the fuse. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was sad. I've grieved before, real grief, honest grief, and whatever this was didn't qualify. No, what I felt was something tighter, quieter. Like when you smell a gas leak and no one believes you. Like the click of a safety being flipped off in a dark room. At 3:17 a.m., I was at the kitchen table surrounded by old manila folders and off-brand sticky notes. The kettle wheezed on the stove, tea long forgotten. I had the company's past 15 years of board amendments spread across the surface like a map to buried rage. Madison thought she was playing chess with a woman who still used a rotary phone. But the thing about being called a dinosaur, dinosaurs ruled the earth longer than startups survive a bear market. I opened my external drive, the one nobody at Halcyon knew existed. A 2 TB brick of truths they forgot I kept. Compliance drafts, voting records, board attendance logs, HR revision timestamps. It wasn't just a history lesson. It was a damn weapon. And then I found it. Folder path, governance amendments /2023/Q3/final board packet signed PDF. I clicked. Page 47. Clause 11.6c, change of control contingency activation. Arthur's voice practically echoed in my head as I read it. In the event that any executive-level appointment, succession, or leadership restructuring, is enacted without prior ratification from a full board vote. Operational authority shall transfer immediately to the predesignated transition officer outlined below, until such time as proper governance protocol is restored and a board quorum reinstates chain of command through formal vote. And there it was. Transition Officer, Deborah Lynn Henley, signed by Arthur M. Kingsley. Date, April 11, 2023, 11 days before his aneurysm, back when he still drank his coffee black and called me from the hospital with just one more form to look over. I stared at the clause for a long moment, not because I didn't believe it, but because I knew exactly how deep it cut. You see, when Madison swanned in with her innovation plan, and the CEO smiled like a sedated game show host, they thought Arthur's name had vanished with the memorial slideshow. They thought old systems could be purged like junk folders. What they didn't realize is I wrote half of those systems. Madison's appointment hadn't gone through a board vote. The CEO, fresh from a grief retreat and dopamine cleanse, had authorized it unilaterally. Everyone thought the strategic hire was just another leadership shuffle. But the clause said otherwise. It said if they touched executive succession without the board's blessing, everything they did was invalid. And I was the firewall, the kill switch, the contingency. Not because I asked to be, but because Arthur made me one. That's what they forgot. I drafted an email to my personal attorney, Leonard Croft. We weren't friends, we didn't send each other memes or birthday texts. But he was precise. Quiet, dangerous in a courtroom. The kind of man you didn't shake hands with unless you had paper to prove it. Subject, Clause 11.6c, Activation Body, Review Attached Clause. If Halcyon has officially severed my employment without board review of recent C-suite changes, initiate contingency notice and contact Kyle Merrick, retained corporate counsel, for board alignment protocol. Attachment, final board packet signed PDF, one last line. Trigger review protocol if I'm officially terminated. I didn't reread it. I didn't double-check the language. I clicked send and stared at the spinning icon until it disappeared, and I closed the laptop and turned off the light. In the quiet, I allowed myself exactly one moment of stillness. One breath. They thought they pushed me out. What they did was open a door they didn't even know existed. And I held the only damn key. The first sign of trouble came 36 hours after my departure, when HR sent out a Slack announcement welcoming a new era of efficiency. That message was followed by 6 different emojis, none of them reassuring, and a screenshot of Madison posing in front of a whiteboard that had innovation equals speed 2 scrawled across it in neon pink dry erase marker. The caption, onward and upward. The second sign was when Karen from procurement texted me in all caps, "Where is the Q4 vendor roll-up? Madison is panicking." I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because Arthur always said, "You don't win by yelling louder. Win by being the last one standing when everyone else has gone hoarse." From my kitchen table throne, I watched it unfold like a slow car crash in silk gloves. Madison had apparently decided she could run my entire compliance board with nothing but her vision board and a Wix template. Within 48 hours, the vendor login portal went down because no one had updated the SSL certificate, something I reminded them about monthly. The shared contract folder? Locked, because Madison's assistant cleaned up unused permissions. 2 of our international partners, both under multi-year deals I negotiated, missed their automatic renewal deadlines. One threatened legal, the other simply ghosted. Procurement was in shambles. IT started sending out emails labeled urgent, Halcyon access requests that went unanswered. The finance director, Greg, accidentally duplicated the Q3 ledger column because he was used to asking me where to place the fiscal overflow. It was beautiful. I didn't gloat. I didn't dance. I didn't even pour the wine yet. I just watched. Quiet, still, like a spider in a corner of the room they forgot existed. But oh, the emails, apparently. Madison called an emergency meeting with the strategic integration team, a group that did not exist until she invented it the day after I left to workshop vendor synergies. Translation. She panicked and asked 3 people from marketing to sit around and Google what compliance actually meant. Then came the icing. A forwarded calendar invite. Subject line, All Hands Halcyon 2.0 Vision Meeting Co-Leads. Madison Sloan and CEO Jonathan Gray, no CCs to the board. No mention of quorum, no sign of oversight. They were flying blind. The agenda was bloated with nonsense. Q1 rebranding opportunity. Halcyon Horizon, staff re-energization via morning mindfulness, operational refresh pathway. Streamlining legacy roles. I read that last one twice. Legacy roles. That was me, that was Arthur. That was every part of the company that actually worked before she showed up in her $800 flats and started calling the break room a wellness zone. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 9 o'clock a.m. They were calling it a rallying moment. I had a better term, detonation window. I printed the invite, pinned it to my corkboard, sat back, and waited. By Thursday, the cracks had gone seismic. Counting flagged the missed vendor payments and temporarily froze outbound wires. Legal sent a courtesy reminder to Jonathan and Madison that any structural executive changes required board review per section 4.7b. Madison replied with, "Thanks, we're good." That emoji smiley face was going to age like milk. Kyle from legal, the only one in that whole building who knew what clause 11.6c really meant, hadn't called me yet, but I knew he'd seen the calendar. Knew he was connecting the dots. He always moved slow, cautious, like a man waiting to hear the entire room before he speaks. Meanwhile, HR was in full panic mode trying to backfill my responsibilities with 2 junior staffers and a spreadsheet titled Deborah Transition Notes, which, according to the whispers, contained a single tab that just said, "Ask Deborah." They couldn't find my vendor tracker, couldn't access the compliance archive, and even locate the policy document that explained who was authorized to renegotiate our insurance contract before the deadline hit. And still, they were marching toward Friday's all hands like nothing was wrong. Like they hadn't just ripped out the engine of the damn ship and were trying to row it with branding slogans and oat milk. The best part? Madison was so convinced of her own genius, she didn't see the tide turning. She thought chaos was creativity, that silence meant victory. She didn't realize the silence was just the sound of a tripwire waiting, and I was already holding the detonator. Kalmeric always looked like he was 2 missed emails away from a coronary. 38, balding prematurely, always sweating just a little too much for someone in a climate-controlled building. But he was sharp, razor sharp, and Arthur trusted him. That was enough for me. He didn't know I was coming. That was intentional. I walked into his office at 7:14 a.m. on Thursday. No appointment, no warning, just me, a hard copy folder, and the calm that settles in your bones when the plan is already in motion. Kyle looked up from behind 2 monitors and a mug that said it's a good day to redact. "Deborah?" He blinked. I wasn't aware you still had. I'm aware," I said, and shut the door behind me. He motioned to a chair with the hesitance of a man about to get sued by a ghost. "Is this an HR thing?" "I'm not looped in on," I didn't answer. I opened the folder, slid it across his desk like I was dealing tarot cards. One document, one page, page 47. Clause 11.6c, the original, signed in ink, initialed, time-stamped. Kyle glanced down, bored at first. Then the color drained from his face so fast I thought I saw his soul backpedal. His finger hovered just above the signature line. He didn't touch it. "Where did you— Wait. This was the last update before." I nodded once. Still hadn't spoken. He sat back like he'd been slapped. Jesus Christ. Silence fell heavy. The kind that hums in your ears like a storm warning. I let it hang there. Let him flip to the footer where Arthur had scrawled in his blocky, all-caps hand, "Only Deborah triggers this, no one else." Kyle cleared his throat. Twice. His hands fidgeted like they wanted to call someone but weren't sure who wouldn't immediately throw up. "This hasn't been filed with the estate yet, right?" he asked. "Probate still in motion. There's a window, but Deborah, if this goes off, it's going to burn the whole org chart." I tilted my head slightly. "That's the idea." He exhaled through his teeth, rubbed his forehead. "You have to understand, Madison was installed by executive appointment. The CEO may have overstepped. But this makes her position void retroactively. You're talking lawsuits, back pay, SEC filings." I just pointed again, at the line where Arthur had listed me as transition officer. "That's not a suggestion, Kyle," I said. "It's the founder's instruction." He stared at it like it might catch fire. "Do you have proof of your termination?" he asked. I pulled a copy of Madison's HR letter from my bag, laid it next to the clause like a side dish to the main course. You read the amount, $1,000, and actually let out a low, disbelieving laugh. "They gave you a check? With no PTO breakdown, no final reconciliation, just a goodbye kiss and an envelope." His eyes narrowed. "You were listed as a key staff member in the vendor liability filings. I was there when Arthur argued to include you in the operational override. And now I'm non-essential," I said, voice flat. Funny how fast memory fades when power's involved. Look back at the document, then up at me. "Are you sure you want to activate this?" I didn't blink. I already did. A beat passed. "I just want you in the room when it detonates." Kyle sat there for a long moment, then he nodded once. Quiet, grave, like a man who just realized he's been standing on a trapdoor. "I'll schedule a legal review with the board. Emergency notice, internal only. I can't stop the all hands, but I can be present. That's all I need." I said. I stood, leaving the documents on his desk. As I reached the door, he called out behind me. "Deborah." I turned. "I'm sorry." I gave him the smallest smile I could manage. Not out of bitterness. Just truth, don't be. "You didn't forget who built this place." He nodded again. But I could see it in his face. He already knew the building wasn't just crumbling. It had already been set on fire. All I had done was show them the match. By noon Thursday, the boardroom air was thick with unspoken panic and citrus-scented disinfectant. Kyle had sent the emergency legal review notice just before lunch, subject line written like a fire alarm. Urgent, governance irregularity review requested before Friday's staff address. He didn't say why. He didn't mention the clause. Just possible procedural violation regarding executive placement post-founder transition. That's lawyer speak for we're all about to step in something deep and legal. The CEO, Jonathan Gray, a walking LinkedIn post with veneers, was annoyed. Not worried, just irritated, like someone had interrupted his meditation playlist. I'm not canceling the all hands, he snapped when Kyle brought it up. Staff morale is already slipping. We need to steady the ship. Kyle, to his credit, didn't argue, just nodded, jotted something in his legal pad, and said, understood. I'll be in attendance then. He didn't need to push harder. The trap had been set. The floorboards were creaking, and no one was smart enough to stop dancing. Meanwhile, Madison treated the impending meeting like it was her red carpet debut. She'd cleared out the executive conference room to rehearse her talking points, pacing in front of a massive flat screen that flickered with bullet points like culture of acceleration, reimagine the work week, and no joke. Halcyon 2.0, powered by vision, not history. I imagine she liked the sound of her own voice more than she liked the company. Madison had that pitch-perfect confidence you can't earn, only inherit or fake. That's the thing about glitter. It only looks valuable when the light hits it right. Up close, it's just glue and flakes. She wore a blazer that probably had its own security detail and kept tapping a pen against her iPad like it was a conductor's baton. At one point, she turned to Jonathan and said, "We need a strong opening. Maybe something about courage or breaking generational barriers." Jonathan nodded sagely, as if he'd just received wisdom from a burning bush, instead of the woman who once asked where we stored the cloud. The rest of the building was vibrating with unease. Staff weren't idiots. They saw the cracks. Vendor delays, locked dashboards, whispered updates. One team lead had already canceled a partner onboarding until leadership clarified compliance oversight. Translation, they didn't know who the hell was in charge, but Madison floated above it all, high on her own rhetoric and clickbait optimism. In the meantime, Kyle was working behind the scenes like a funeral director, prepping the casket, while the deceased still thought they were alive. He forwarded the signed clause to Halcyon's internal governance archive. Then he pinged the estate lawyer, a probate pitbull named Valerie Tran, whose entire personality was made of deadlines and clauses that end careers. Kyle's message was short. Client has provided original signed copy of Clause 11.6c with founding officer's signature and transition officer named. Termination has occurred. Executive appointments not board ratified. Please confirm eligibility for contingency trigger. Valerie replied 2 hours later with a 5-word confirmation that read like a verdict. Clause valid. Contingency is now active. Timestamp. Friday, 8:57 a.m. 3 minutes before the all hands. That was when Kyle stood up from his desk, adjusted his cuffs with the stiffness of a man marching into a courtroom, and printed the clause on firm white stock. He didn't need to rehearse. He wasn't performing. He was about to read a eulogy. Madison was still fixing her hair in the reflection of the projector screen. Jonathan was straightening his tie and practicing his opening line. We've entered a bold new chapter. Oh, they had. Just not the one they thought. The room was ready. The stage was set. And though I was still off-screen, somewhere beyond the buzz of fluorescent lights and smug grins, my silence was about to speak louder than every word Madison rehearsed. I pulled into the Halcyon parking lot at 8:47 a.m. sharp. Same spot I'd used for 2 decades, slot hash 27, left row. The one with the faded reserved stencil Arthur painted himself with a half-dead roller in 09. I used to joke it was crooked like our Q1 budgets. He said it gave the place character. The walk from my car to the lobby was only 300 steps. I counted them, not because I was nervous, but because routine steadies the hand. The air smelled like wet mulch and cheap ambition. And inside, lemon-scented cleaning agent they always overused before big investor visits. Guest today qualified. I wore the same gray suit I'd worn my first day on the job. The seams were a little tighter now. Time has a way of shrinking fabric and stretching skin, but the shoulders still squared. The buttons still held. I figured if I was going to be the ghost at their feast, I might as well wear the uniform I haunted in. As I stepped into the building, the receptionist, new girl, maybe 6 weeks on the job, froze. Her eyes scanned her tablet, then scanned me. Hi, can I help you?" "No," I said and smiled. "I know where I'm going." I walked past her before she could fumble a policy. Past the trophy wall they hadn't updated since 2018. Past the glass display case with the old product mock-ups, now gathering dust because Madison said they clashed with the rebrand. The all hands was being held in conference room A, largest room on the 4th floor. Seats 80 uncomfortably. They'd set up folding chairs in the back overflow. That was where I went. No announcement, no scene. Just slid into a chair, crossed my legs, and folded my hands like I was waiting for a sermon. Staff started filtering in slowly. A few looked at me, startled. 1 or 2 nodded. One gave me a half smile and a good morning like we were just back in the normal rhythm of things. Another whispered something to her teammate, and they both turned their heads just slightly, subtle but sharp. I didn't react, just sat there, calm, watching the screen flicker with the title slide. Halcyon 2.0, redefining the future. The irony was so thick it could have been a keynote on its own. Kyle entered next. No tie, just a dark blazer and a look on his face like he was about to call time of death. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. No expression, just a flicker of acknowledgement, like the last puzzle piece snapping into place. The board chair came in right after. Mr. Langford. Silver hair, ex-Navy, always polished. He saw me, stopped in the doorway for half a second, then gave me the briefest nod, one of those tiny things that say everything. You're not supposed to be here, but you are. Madison entered at 8:58 a.m. She was glowing, designer blazer in cobalt blue, hair curled and sprayed into weatherproof confidence. A clipboard in one hand, iced matcha in the other. She breezed past the junior staff like royalty being escorted to the throne room, lips mouthing phrases from her notes, practicing her opening with little, breathy pauses like she was about to accept a Grammy. She didn't see me. Neither did Jonathan, who trailed her like a golden retriever in loafers. He slapped a few backs, tossed out a "let's energize people," and adjusted his mic. At 8:59, Kyle stepped to the front of the room. He cleared his throat into the mic once, tapped the screen to wake it, and opened a thick folder. Mine. The lights dimmed. The door clicked shut behind the last staffer. And me, I just sat there. Still, quiet, heartbeat steady, not a word, not a glare, but everyone felt it. The old wolf had returned to the pack, and she brought the storm with her. Jonathan stepped up to the podium like he'd just won a Nobel Peace Prize in synergy. He gave the crowd a 1,000-watt smile, the kind of grin you only get from spiritual cleanses, overpriced teeth whitening, and absolutely no idea what's about to hit you. Good morning, everyone, he beamed, arms outstretched like a preacher who just discovered Canva. Today marks the beginning of a bold new chapter for Halcyon. A chapter of streamlined processes, innovative momentum, and culture-driven excellence. The projector behind him flared to life. On screen, welcome to Halcyon 2.0, where legacy meets tomorrow, and standing beside him, like some tech conference cardboard cutout of ambition and contouring, was Madison, clipboard in hand, lips pursed in that smug, PR-perfect smirk. She didn't look at the room, she looked past it, because that's what she thought of the people here, placeholders, extras, backdrop for her TED Talk cosplay. And Jonathan? He was already 3 slides deep into his manifesto, talking about value-aligned disruption, empathy-forward team structures, and sunsetting outdated workflows. Translation: they fired the people who knew what the hell they were doing. I didn't move, not a twitch. Just sat in the back row, hands folded, expression blank, as Kyle slowly stood from the side of the room. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout, just lifted one hand gently, like a parent asking for quiet in a room full of children who'd broken something expensive. Before we proceed, he said, evenly, I'm obligated to read one item into the record. Jonathan paused, confused, glancing at Kyle like someone trying to remember which intern this was. Madison stiffened. Kyle opened the folder. In accordance with Article Roman 11, Section 6C of Halcyon's Board Ratification Protocol, amended and signed by the late Arthur M. Kingsley on April 11th of this year, I will now read the binding contingency clause for executive succession. The room went still. You could hear the HVAC hum shift gears. Kyle read it aloud slowly, each word like a hammer to the spine. In the event that any executive-level appointment, succession, or restructuring is enacted without full board ratification, operational authority shall transfer immediately to the named transition officer below until such time as a proper vote is conducted and recorded. He turned the page. Silence. Paper rustling like thunder. That officer, he said, looking directly at the front row, is listed as Deborah L. Henley. There was no applause, no gasp, just a dead hush. The kind of silence that sucks the air out of a room and fills it with the static of realization. The kind where every heartbeat feels like it might be the last before something breaks. Jonathan stepped back from the podium like it burned him. His lips parted. Words came, then died. His eyes flicked toward Madison, then toward Kyle, then finally to the back of the room. To me. He hadn't seen me when he walked in, but he saw me now. And the look on his face, it was like watching a man realize his parachute was a backpack. Madison's expression didn't crack. She just blinked, swallowed, then blinked again. Jonathan, however, took a full step backward. His mouth opened. Oh my God, he said, that was all. No denial, no spin. Just the raw, naked panic of a man who thought he was the lion, until the real lion stood up. I stood, not dramatically, no musical sting, no gasps, just the clean, deliberate motion of someone whose time had arrived. Jonathan stepped back again, like my movement had gravity. Madison finally blinked, fast, shallow, the kind of blink people do when they're trying not to scream in public. I didn't rush. I walked forward, heels silent on the laminate. A few staff turned in their seats to follow me with their eyes. Kyle remained still, folder open, like a witness to something sacred and surgical. When I reached the front of the room, I didn't look at the CEO or Madison. I didn't need to. That part was over. I turned to Kyle. From my bag, pulled a sealed envelope, thick with paper and heavier with intent. I handed it to him. He opened it immediately, no questions, and began skimming. Inside was everything. A transition roadmap, chain of command corrections, notifications for legal, finance, and external partners, a list of personnel to be reinstated, a 2-sentence resignation acceptance letter for the CEO, pending suspension, and an addendum Madison wouldn't like, an immediate review of her appointment, all communications and all expense reports charged in the last 60 days. I didn't say a word while he read. Kyle's lips tightened. He handed it to the board chair, Langford. Langford took longer. His hand shook only slightly when he reached the last page. Then, with the practiced authority of a man who once captained a battleship and now sat in a room full of children playing CEO, he pulled out a pen and signed it. That was it. No applause, no dramatic music. Just ink on paper and a future redirected. Kyle looked at Jonathan. Effective immediately, your role is suspended pending a board governance vote. You are not to engage in further company operations until notified. Jonathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish tossed on asphalt. This isn't how, you don't get to speak anymore, I said. Then I turned to Madison. She was pale now, like someone had drained her highlight reel. The smugness was gone. She clutched her clipboard like it might anchor her to the room. You were right about one thing, I said, and let my voice drop into something heavy and calm. My time here is over, but not before I close this chapter properly. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Langford gave Kyle a subtle nod. Two internal security staff, quiet, unarmed, professional, entered from the back and approached Madison. One gently took her clipboard, the other gestured toward the door. She hesitated for a beat as if some miracle might land in her lap. None came. She walked out. No high heels clicking, just the soft scuff of ego being erased. The room was still. Staff stared, stunned, some wide-eyed, some relieved. One near the front, an engineer I hadn't seen in years, smiled. I turned away from the podium. Across the room, mounted above the main screen, was Arthur's portrait. He hated that thing, said it made him look like a used car dealer. But we all kept it there anyway because deep down, he was the soul of the place. The frame had been crooked for months. I walked to it, placed both hands on the sides, and straightened it until it sat clean and square against the wall. Then I turned to the room. He built this place. I safeguarded it. You tried to own it, but you never earned it. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.